welcome to Confessions. I'm your hostess of life, Jennifer Watson. I'm an empowerment and life transition coach, and my mission is to create a safe space for people to explore the darkness so they can step into their brightest of lights. And that's what this show is all about. Tonight we'll be talking about the business psychology of the new rich. What is that exactly? Well, it's a mindset, a commitment, and a focus to achieving peak performance. Too often we let our minds and our actions either sabotage our progress or delay our goals. But with just a few mental adjustments, we can get ourselves right back on track. Joining me to talk about this tonight is Daniel Tolson. He's Australia's leading peak performance coach, international author, and entrepreneur. He's a powerhouse of such programs such as the Tolson Institute and the Success Intensive. That's a tongue twister for you. And it's an honor to have him on the show with me tonight. So welcome, Daniel. Welcome to Confessions.
Thank you so much for having me here. Very excited.
I love that accent. I can't. You must hear that all the time.
In North Carolina, back in 2002, I think the Southerners, you call them, they'd go ballistic. We'd go to the train station, the petrol station, we'd go to the airport, and people would just lose it when they heard the accent, because I think a lot of people had probably seen The Crocodile Hunter. It's a good accent to have.
All right, so are you ready to bare your soul?
I'm ready to bare my soul.
Great. So before we get into the peak performance coaching and the business psychology of the new rich, why don't we take you back to your not so humble beginnings in aviation and as a champion athlete? How have those experiences shaped who you are today?
I grew up in the Hawkesbury district of Western Sydney. So where my family lived was a farming belt. And there's a river, and it's 110 kilometres from the coast all the way up to the farming and the grazing land. And my dad was a champion barefoot water skier. So we grew up on the water, and we were water skiing at a very young age, like 3 or 4. So we're used to doing sports, and my dad was already a peak athlete in his day. And every weekend of summer throughout the year, we'd be out on the water skiing. And we're always surrounded by people who always wanted to better themselves, especially in sport. And one of the good things about the wakeboarding and the water skiing is that for the people who were doing it, you had to work hard. So you had to be able to put the petrol in the boat. You had to be able to buy the boat to start with. And it took a lot of effort to get down there, but you had to be in a peak state all the time in terms of physical conditioning. So I was growing up with people who always wanted to better themselves. And throughout my life, I really got excited. And as the sport changed and developed, also, so I go from kneeboarding to water skiing to barefooting to wakeboarding. And then once I found wakeboarding, I just knew that was the thing that I wanted to do. And then I made a decision that that's what I wanted, and I was going to be the best that I could. And that turned into a business. So my brother and I were traveling around Australia competing, and we saw an opportunity where people were following us. We had fans. So we started a brand, and we started a brand back in 2001. And we developed that to such a level that was selling our products in more than 54 shops across the country. Wow. And the wakeboarding then took me to London, England. It took me to America. I was working at Coble Ski School there at a summer camp teaching American kids wakeboarding. And then it took me to Russia, Philippines, Thailand, Taiwan. It's taking me to so many other places. The list goes on. It gets really long. Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And I had a girlfriend at that stage, and she was an air hostess. And I thought, wow, what a great life and what a great thing to transition into. That's how I got into the cabin crew. And when I was there, I was in peer support. I was in critical incident stress management. And then I started asking the right questions because I had answers, and I was looking for answers to some of my own problems. And that's how I got into the wakeboarding, out of the wakeboarding into the corporate world, and now here.
Interesting. So how did your time in aviation then turn into this new direction in coaching?
2008, I went to Dubai. So it was September 28, 2008. And I got there, and I knew that because of my previous girlfriend's experience there, she said, look, if you join the aviation, essentially you're going to be a glorified trolley dolly. You're going to be serving chicken and beef at 40,000 feet, and you're going to think that you're really, really great. But she goes, at the end of your time there, you're only going to leave as a male hostess. She said, you won't have much skill set after that. So I decided there's probably something I need to learn. And I loved coaching, and I was always coaching water sports. And I was on a flight from Dubai to Manchester. And on this flight, this guy stopped me on the flight. I was working in economy cabin, and he said, "Excuse me," he said, "What's your name?" I said, "My name's Daniel." He goes, "You have this aura around you." He goes, "Your light just spreads all the way through the cabin."
Wow.
And I thought he might have been having a few drinks. And I said, "You serious, mate?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Just your aura." He goes, "It's this big light that surrounds you, and I can see it touching people." I'm like, "Wow, that's really cool." I said, let's have a chat. So I stopped and chatted to him, and his name was Christoph Speeson. And he was a life coach, and he was an author also. And he was actually the guy who got me to go to Coach Training Alliance, because he'd just finished Coach Training Alliance before that. And we got him talking about it. I'm like, "Yeah, coaching. I used to do water sports coaching, and I think I could do that with people." So I started on this journey, and I started with Coach Training Alliance, and then I did the certification there. Then I found another course in London, and then I was flying from Dubai to Johannesburg in South Africa. And I was on a flight with my fiance at the time, which is my wife now. And we met this gentleman, and he came from economy cabin, and he came into the back galley. And he started talking to us. And as he was talking to us, I noticed there was something different about the language that he was using. And he started talking to us about what he did. And he said that he was a mentalist, and he was a hypnotherapist. And I was really fascinated. And I said, "Where can I learn that?" And he said, "What you need to learn," he goes, "you've got to go learn about Dianetics." And I said, "What's Dianetics?" And he told me about L. Ron Hubbard, and he told me about Scientology. Then he told me how Dianetics was an offshoot. And I got really excited. So I thought, well, I better go study Dianetics. Next couple of years, I'm studying Dianetics, and I'm flying in and out of America. Sorry, flying in and out of America. And I ended up in Mission District in San Francisco. And I started going to all the spiritual shops and buying all these books on Dianetics. And then I met a guy there, and he stopped me. And he went, "Wow." He goes, "You remind me of somebody." And I said, "Who do you remind me of?" And he pulled out a deck of tarot cards, and he took out the moon card. And it just happened to be that the moon was my birth card also. It led into the tarot.
And then it led you here to be a peak performance coach.
I discovered that in the tarot, there was so much human psychology and the archetypes, but the model of the business world can often be quite cold and not open to, emotions or intuition. So I had to figure out, how can I bring that knowledge in and help people break through their limitations? So I took the knowledge from Dianetics, the tarot, from coaching, turned it into NLP and timeline therapy, and then just created my own branch that works for me and my clients.
So what is this business psychology for the new rich?
Essentially, business psychology for the new rich is all about empowering entrepreneurs so that they can live life on their terms, so that they can run a business exactly how they want it, so that they can create a lifestyle business where they make enough money and they can go out and do all the things that they've ever wanted to do without having to have a corporate structure. The emotional intelligence technique. So for the first time in their life, they can bring emotion, they can bring intuition into their business, and they can let that business be an extension of their personality. And having the courage and the confidence to be able to stand up and get exactly what they want, stand up and talk about their services the way they want to service, and hit their goals the way they want to hit their goals without having to go with the traditional business paradigm.
Daniel, I think that's brilliant. You see corporations today, and they're stuck in the old paradigm, and they don't know how to move forward. And it's like, you need to go back to what your passions were. What did you start the business for to begin with? And realize that just like people change, businesses need to evolve and keep up with the times. And, even goals change for them. So what was important to them 50 years ago is not important to them today. So I think it's incredible how you go to those corporations who seem like they really want to make a difference and bring that level of emotional intelligence to them and bring intuition. They think that they are outside of that because it's got to be this stingy corporate structure. But there's so much opportunity, and I think the work that you do is really great, because I think corporations would see a lot more happy employees if, in fact, there was more business psychology brought to the table. So thank you for that.
Cheers.
I love it. So you're also the founder of such programs as the Tolson Institute and the Success Tour. Why don't you take us a little bit through that and the inspiration behind creating them?
Inspiration was when I was an entrepreneur, I was always told, from a young age that you've just got to work harder than everybody else. You got to muscle up, you got to toughen up, and you can't have any excuses. So people told me what to do, but nobody ever showed me how to do it. They said, if you got a challenge, you just got to crush it. And I'd tried that for years and years. And I thought, that just doesn't work. It's okay to give somebody a concept, but why not give people a process on how to be successful? So in the Success Intensive, we take people who are in real estate, startup entrepreneurs, corporations, people who are looking at getting out of corporates, and people who are running their own business and network marketing, and we put them in an enriched environment. And I remember Einstein, in one of his books, he said that if you're in an enriched environment for as little as 15 minutes, the grey matter in your brain actually increases. So we take these awesome people, we put them in an environment where people want to succeed, people want to break through any limitations they have, and they can start to get the focus that they need to have to make that first change. And we take them through the Success Intensive. We get them super clear on what they want. And when I wrote the book, The 5 Principles of Success, the number one thing all people have to have is to know their outcome. But most people have never been told to start with the end in mind. And if they have been told, they don't know how to do it. So we take them through and get them absolute clarity so that at the end of the 2 hours, they know exactly the next step they have to take, whether it be approaching a certain company, whether it be getting out of specific relationships that hold them back in business, or is it a level of emotional intelligence that they've never had before? And because the old paradigm and the old thinking of crabs in a bucket, it's the first time they've actually been in an environment where 100% of the people support their growth and their excellence. And that's really our gift back to the community to say, you know what, there is something different, and it only takes 2 hours. You don't have to spend a lifetime trying to build a business or changing your mindset. You don't have to go to a psychiatrist and get labeled with a disease. Just come and know that everything you're doing is already good. We're just going to make you sharper and better and faster than you ever have been before. And once they realize that they can make a change in 2 hours, they're willing and ready to commit to whatever they have to do to chase their goals. Whether that's just putting a plan down, whether it's taking the first action, whatever it is for them, they get their outcome.
And from all this wisdom, you have become an author of many books, an international author, and you just touched base on one of them. So what are some of your favorite books that you'd like to share with us today?
Oh, the pick of the week this week is definitely $100,000 per month in real estate, or earn $100,000 a month in real estate. I looked at the most successful real estate agents in Sydney, and I took them through a modelling process, and I modelled exactly what one agent needed to do in terms of the thinking process, in terms of the direction of their thinking, in terms of their values and their belief structures. And I denominalised it, put it back in a process, and wrote a book on it so that any agent could pick up that book and then get the millionaire's mindset and begin to take the first steps to adopt that into their career. And just on Tuesday, I sat with a young real estate agent. He used to do $500,000 a year in commissions, but he had a series of significant emotional events. He had a big fight with his wife. He lost a lot of confidence because he'd lost some clients, and he never bounced back. And he rocked up to his first appointment with me, and he had read this book. He'd torn all the corners off the pages because he knew he had to go back to that. And because it's an experiential workbook, he went out and filled everything in that book. And he came back and said, Daniel, this has changed my life. He goes, this is exactly what I needed right now. So my pick of the week is definitely make $100,000 a month in real estate, because when I get that type of feedback, I know that somebody's made a change. And if it's just one person who's made a change, then I believe I've made a great contribution to the world and to make it better.
Absolutely. It really is the key, right? So where can everybody find you? All your books, your success tours, everything to sign up for you. Where can they find you at?
The simplest way, jump onto my website, www.danieltolson.com. So that's DanielTolson.com, All of my books I give away for free online, so you can download them. But if you'd like to have a hard copy, I'm more than happy to send you a hard copy also.
Excellent. So what else do you have going on?
Going on, my daughter, she's going to be 3 in December. So I'm going to be going back to Taiwan. So I live half the year in Sydney, half the year in Taiwan. So I commute to Australia to run my business, and then I commute back to be with my girls.
And it's really cute. You know, you call your daughter Cup Noodle, don't you? So cute.
Yeah. And then my wife was pregnant. I'm like, well, if I'm a Dan Noodle, I better have a cup noodle. So we gave her the hashtag Cup Noodle.
You know, I love it all. I think it's all amazing. You are an amazing person. I've been watching you. I'm following you on Facebook with all your events that you've been giving, and it's just, you're soaring, and I'm so proud of you. And, you know, as a fellow classmate, I just think it's amazing. So we've come to the point of the show where it's confession time. This is the point of the show where we reveal a struggle in our lives and how we broke through it so that viewers can relate and see that it is possible to break free. So you shared with me before the show a little bit about performance anxiety that you were having. Would you care to go through that story with us, share that experience, and then how you broke through it?
So 1993, I was out on the Nepean River, which is about 70 kilometres due west of Sydney. And my brother and I were having wakeboarding lessons. And we'd been watching a guy, Tony, and Tony was out riding, and he was doing really, really good. And then my brother, it was his turn, and he got up first go, and he did really, really good. And then I was third, and I started to think to myself, I thought, man, if I don't get up and ride, I'm going to look really stupid. And, you know, what if I can't compete with them? What if I can't be as good as them? What if I just can't do it? I'm going to look stupid. So in the back of my mind, I'm going, well, what do I have to do so I don't have to look stupid? So I self-sabotaged myself, and I faked an injury. So as soon as they went to pull me up out of the water, I pretended I hurt my back. And then they said, come on, give it another go. And then I went to go up out of the water again. I pretended I hurt my back again. Because I thought the best way to avoid the embarrassment would be to fake an injury. So I faked the injury, and I got rewarded for it. So I thought, wow, that's really cool. I can fake an injury, and then I don't have to do what I wanted to do. And then people go, oh, you poor thing, give me a little pat on the back. You'll be right, mate. And that pattern then began to replicate itself. So after that, I actually found a real big passion for wakeboarding. And my brother got really, really good, really, really fast. But I kept now holding myself back, thinking that I was going to get hurt. If I go wakeboarding, I'll get hurt, because the injury that I faked, I then believed I actually got hurt. And I used to tell the story that I did get hurt. So I'd convince myself that I was hurt. And then after a couple of injuries, when I was 15, I had 2 major knee reconstructions at 17 and 18. I'd really convinced myself by that stage that I just wasn't going to be able to wakeboard. I was going to get hurt all the time. And my brother got really upset at me one day, and he said, dude, he's like, what is going on? He goes, you're one of the best riders in the country, yet you just don't apply yourself. He goes, the only time you apply yourself is at a competition. You go out and win everything. When the camera's out and the movies cameras are out, you do everything bigger and better than everybody else. But when it comes to enjoyment and having fun, you just don't ride to your potential. And again, I made another excuse. You know, maybe there was something wrong with my knee. And that pattern kept happening. And even it happened when I was in 2007 in Dubai. I was over there, first pro rider in the country, and people wanted to see me ride. So people would come and see me ride. They'd bring the TV cameras out, and I'd put on a full spectacular myself. I could never enjoy it. And that's when I really got into coaching, is I was asking myself the questions, how is it possible that my body's perfect, yet I have so much performance anxiety? I have so much fear about going out and riding. And that's when I started asking questions in Dubai. That's when I started to meet all these teachers on the path. You know, how can I break through this? There's nothing wrong with my body. There's nothing outside of me. It's got to be inside of my head. And that's when I started studying coaching, Dianetics. I started looking at hypnosis, tarot. I've looked at NLP, timeline therapy, embraining, and I've studied so many different forms of psychology. I thought something in here has got to have my answer. And in 2013, I went and did a timeline therapy practitioner course. And during that 5-day course, I broke through all of my fears, all of my anxieties. Sorry, that was 2012. Did that in 2012. And I went, wow, for the first time, I actually feel that I could start to wakeboard again without that fear. But because I was living in Dubai, then I moved to Taiwan, I didn't get to test my body again, or my mind. And it kind of escaped out of my mind. And in 2013, I moved back to Australia and I went wakeboarding. And I went out and I got really addicted to it again. I started riding really good. And I thought to myself, I've got rid of that fear. I've got rid of that anxiety. So I went and trained every day for like 21 or 22 days over that 30-day period. And I discovered that I was a much better rider since my last competition. So my last competition was 2006 when I was Australian champion. And I became a better rider and I hadn't trained properly for like 6 or 7 years. And then I realized I got rid of that fear. I got rid of that anxiety. And I went out there and my body was perfect strong and I could do exactly what I wanted. And that's my confession, was I used to self-sabotage, but then I realized it was all inside of me. Once I realized it was inside me, I could take control of it. And now I can help other people get rid of the same problem that I had, but they don't have to wait 15 or 20 years. They can do it right now.
You know, Daniel, I think that's something that everybody can relate to, the self-sabotage and the performance anxiety, where we work ourselves up in our minds that we can't do anything possible. And I think it's more common than we all realize. And hearing your story, I will hopefully help others recognize that within themselves and to break free. So what advice would you have for others that are going through this kind of performance anxiety? What would you recommend to them?
I think the three things that are the most important is that if you want something different in your life, you've got to be able to get rid of the things that prevent you from getting what you want. So you've got to be able to get rid of any negative emotions that you have inside of yourself. Things like anger, sadness, fear, hurt, or guilt. You've got to get rid of any limiting decisions like, I can't make enough money. I can't have the relationship that I want. I can't have the body that I truly deserve. You've got to be able to get rid of those and then change your values and your beliefs. That's the first step. The second step is you've got to take action towards that thing that you want. And thirdly, you've got to enforce your boundaries. And you can't let anybody tell you what you can and can't achieve in life. You've got to make that rule and apply that.
Daniel, that was great advice. So I want to thank you so much for coming on Confessions tonight. We're already at the end of our show. So what final message do you have for our viewers?
Is focus on what you want. Focus on what you want.
Well, that's simple and to the point. Brilliant. Well, Daniel, thank you so much again for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to have you on.
It was a pleasure, and catch you later.
To learn more about Daniel Tolson, you can find him at www.danieltolson.com. I'll put all his links in a video below. I highly recommend that you check this amazing man out. It's an honor to know him. If anybody is interested in learning more about me, I'm an empowerment coach. You can find me at www.jennifer-watson.me. Thank you for tuning in tonight. Join us next week as we explore the topic of body shaming and why it really needs to stop. It does. It just needs to stop. So watch next week. I appreciate you watching tonight. Namaste and embrace your power.